Hi, how are you today? So, I don't know why it says sorry on the captioner. I said, how are you? And I've noticed I almost always start my videos with, hi, how are you today? I don't really know why I do that. Like, whatever. Shit. So today we are still going over our trial exhibits from the search monopoly case on Google. There is currently two monopoly cases against Google. One, what the initial complaint was filed in 2020. This is the search monopoly case in Judge Mehta's court, Mehta. That's the one we are focusing on in this live stream. And the other one that we'll get to after all of this, in other live streams, is the ad technology monopoly case against Google. I believe that initial complaint was filed in 2023, and that's in Judge Brinkema's court, Brinekema. Did I say that right? Yeah, I think I did. Close enough. So yeah, we'll get to that one next. So those are two different monopoly cases. I had previously been confused on if it was one case, or what, because the search monopoly case does cover how they also use search advertising in upholding their search monopoly. So with that wording, I got confused about if the search monopoly and ad monopoly were one or two different cases, but there are in fact two different cases. So yeah. So today we are focusing on the 2020 trial exhibits. We've covered 16 of the trial exhibits so far. And so we're just going to see how many more we can keep doing. I've been going back and forth about how long it'll take me to do, because one minute I'm like, I can finish this up in a few more days, and the next minute I'm like, nah, it's going to be another week or two. But yeah, so the presentations do take me a bit to go through. When I say a presentation, I'm like, okay, we might be able to get somewhere between one to maybe three tops presentations done in a live stream. But then they have a lot of other documentation in here which we can get through much quicker, such as emails and things like that. Um, and so, yeah, so I think some of these live streams will only be doing one or two things, if that, maybe three. And then some of them will actually get a good handful, maybe a dozen things covered. We'll just be seeing what comes up as we continue going. So yeah, fuck it, we're just gonna keep going. Alrighty, I am going to roll my intro, and then we're gonna do this bitch. Thank you for joining me today. Hi, my name is Alexis, also known as Lexi or Deaf Child. I was born deaf, hard of hearing. I began doing business as Deaf Child 2013, marketing 2011, sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales. My Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. Anyway, I'm here to bitch about whatever the fuck is on my mind. So here we go. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. So, first up, just a little quick review. Last live stream, we only did one trial exhibit because I couldn't physically make myself sit down anymore yesterday, and I was thinking about trying again, but I was just like, nah, I had to be a little more active, but we did get to cover the Professor Michael Whinston presentation on monopoly maintenance and competitive harm in the last live stream. And my main takeaway from that was I feel like it really explained how the contracts locked people into uh, being stuck into these situations. And that is part of how Google was able to then create their monopoly. I feel like, that's probably a terrible summary, but that's kind of what I got from that basically in a nutshell, is it really goes into further technicalities on that. So yeah, today we're gonna be moving on. And next up, we're going to be looking at exhibit number UPX D105, And this is the Professor Douglas Oard presentation from November 15, 2023. And it seems to be uploaded that same day. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, so my bad. Um, but yeah, so this is the rebuttal testimony of Professor Douglas W. What the fuck am I saying? I'm about to say like www. The fuck? This isn't a website. Okay. Rebuttal testimony of Professor Douglas Oard. Um, and so the assignment here, it says, my assignment, to provide my expert opinion of the analysis and opinions offered by Google's expert, Professor Edward A. Fox, in his June 3rd, 2022 expert report, the Fox Report. Okay. It says, my overall conclusion. Professor Fox substantially understates the beneficial effects of user-side data on search quality. And then it addresses Professor Fox's assignment. It says, Professor Fox states he was asked by Google Counsel to test the extent to which Google's search quality is affected by the volume of user interaction data available to train its ranking algorithms. And then it shows Professor Fox's conclusions. We have 4 here. 1. Vast majority of Google Microsoft search quality gap must be explained by factors other than volume of user interaction data. 2. A company as efficient as Google could have search quality similar to Google, even at Microsoft's scale. 3. A company as efficient as Google, but with Microsoft's scale, would not meaningfully benefit from increase in user interaction data. And 4. There are diminishing returns to search quality from an increase in the quantity of user interaction data. And so I am obviously not an attorney, but I wonder if, if this argument could have been part of why they were able to easily get a monopoly determination against Google in terms of the ruling, because in my opinion, if this was Google's testimony after they already admitted that they did rely on scale to grow for their search engine, because we've seen that in prior evidence, then these conclusions, in my opinion, could be perceived as pretext or otherwise bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me. That's just me, my interpretation. I'm not an attorney. I'm just marinating on what on what I'm processing here. So yeah, next up, it shows 2 more of Professor Fox's conclusions, and it says 1. Vast majority of Google Microsoft search quality gap must be explained by factors other than volume of user interaction data, and a company as efficient as Google could have search quality similar to Google even at Microsoft scale. I apologize, those are the same first 2. I guess we are addressing those now. So it says the basis for Professor Fox's central conclusion. On one side, it shows like a graph of Google and Bing, but I don't know what the fuck they're measuring. So they're measuring something, but I really can't tell you what the fuck this means. And then it shows Bing versus Google, and then frozen versus retrained Google, but then it says redacted for public filing. So we're seeing these graphs without any indication of what they're measuring, if that makes sense. And then it says, my response to Professor Fox's central conclusions. Professor Fox's conclusions are unsupported because of unmeasured benefits of user-side data in this experiment, measurement errors in the quality gap, and important benefits of user-side data that this experiment cannot measure. So, I believe he's basically saying, we all know you can't we all know that Google trying to claim that their access to a large amount of search queries not being part of why they could grow, because they're trying to say, no, it's because we're so efficient. this response is saying, yeah, that's bullshit, because we all fucking know we have to have a large enough sample size to actually run an experiment, which is what you have that everybody else doesn't. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, is basically what's happening here. And then it fucking keeps going, and it says many components not retrained. It says measurable effect of user-side data, measured effect of user-side data. So measurable effect is higher than measured effect is what it's showing. Like, I don't know. And then it says Google only retrained 6 components, chosen based on their expected effect on web ranking, such as 10 blue links. Components were not chosen based on their effect on indexing, spelling correction, search features like images, video, search advertising, and whole page ranking. And then it shows Glue's importance to whole page ranking. And from a 2016 quote here, it says user interaction data from Glue is already being used in Web, KE, and Web Answers. More recently, it is one of the critical signals in Tetris. Let's see if I can see further on this documentation. This seems to be from a newsletter from 2016. So yeah, and it seems to be addressing Glue's unified user interaction model. So it says here, Glue is a project for providing unified user interaction signal models to all types of search results. User interaction signals include clicks, as well as all other interactions from users with search results or search results pages, which can be mined from session logs. Glue is generalized and extended nav boost. So because Glue is generalized and extended nav boost, and Glue is a project for providing unified user interaction signal models to all types of search results, we now know what nav boost is. You know what I'm saying? And then it says, nav boost has been a critical piece in our ranking algorithms for a long time. However, back to 2013 fall, when we began the Glue project, we were encountering serious issues in using user interaction signals in Google search. First, Google search entered the mobile search era, and a number of new result types such as knowledge panels, web answers, live result one boxes, weather, finance, sport, etc., and many types of local results were launched to provide answers directly. NavBoost was only available for web results, but not available for the non-web results. Okay. Then it says, Glue is used to trigger and position search features. So here we have a quote attributed to Professor Edward Fox, who is Google's expert witness. And it says, in simpler terms, Glue aggregates diverse types of user interactions, such as clicks, hovers, scrolls, and swipes, and creates a common metric to compare web results and search features. This process determines both whether a search feature is triggered and where it triggers on the page. And then it says, Professor Fox has never stated that Glue was retrained. And it shows the 6 ranking components retrained in the DRE. So on one side, it shows the component names of NavBoost, RankBrain, DeepRank, QBST, term weighting, and rank embedded BERT. And then it seems to be redacted. Honestly, I don't know what the fuck this is supposed to be showing, but yeah. And then it says the IS 4 at 5 metric evaluates web and search features results. And this is another quote from Professor Edward Fox, Google's expert witness. It says, Google rates the top 5 positions for IS 485, counting both search features like one boxes and blue links. And then it says 10 blue links. Rankings effects on IS 485 can be small. And it shows frozen Google, where I'm assuming that they're trying to indicate that the search result pages stay the same. versus retrain Google, where there is weighted results on the ranking, I'm assuming based on the interaction. And then it says, search features trigger for many results. And a quote here says, small fraction of search engine result page is web results for many queries. And it shows my response to Professor Fox's central conclusions. Professor Fox's conclusions are unsupported because of unmeasured benefits of user-side data in this experiment, measurement errors in the quality gap, and important benefits of user-side data that this experiment cannot measure. And then it says correcting for measurement errors. First, it shows the effect of Google teaching to the test. And it shows the difference between Google IS4 at 5 and Bing IS4 at 5. And it shows the actual IS4 at 5 gap is smaller than was measured. 2. Google's choice to rate all queries based on mobile presentation. And 3. Google's difficulties accurately rating Bing's results. Next up, it shows teaching to the test. Google trains using IS. Bing does not. And so here, this is from a redacted document, so we can't see the rest of it, but the title of the document says the 6 ranking components retrained in the DRE. And then we have the component names and the data used. So for nav boost, it says engineered functions have parameters that are learned by trying to maximize the IS ratings of the query set result rankings they produce. For rank brain, then fine-tuned on IS rating data. Deep rank, then it is fine-tuned on rating IS data. And then QBST. Then the ranking integration is trained on rating data. Term weighting. Then the ranking integration is trained on rating data. Rank embed BERT. Trained on documents, queries, click logs, and rating data. So here they're showing, that even in Google's own documentation of their own coding, they literally say over and over and over again that the development of their algorithms is based on having access to data. So where here they're trying to claim, oh, we don't need data, we're just efficient. Well, your fucking documentation says otherwise. You know what I'm saying? That, I believe, in my opinion, is what we are getting from here. You know what I mean? Okie dokie. And then next up, we have the mobile evaluation understates Bing's search quality. We have a quote here. It says, on desktop, Google is comparable to Bing. And it says search quality, features plus ranking. On mobile, Google leads all search engines. On desktop, Google is comparable to Bing, but leads all others. And the rest of this is redacted. What's not says, across the board, Google outperforms more on mobile than desktop. And it seems to be August 2020 search comparative research, but I can't it's redacted, so. And then next up, we got another quote here from Professor Edward Fox, Google's expert witness, and it says, the measured quality gap does not account for this. Question, you don't know what the IS gap would be if human raters were looking at desktop presentation, right? Answer, Google made a decision some years ago to do auto-rater experiments with mobile. So that's all I know. Okay. And then it says, scraped results can understate Bing's search quality. Question: why are the two methods so different? And response: in the full page scrape, Bing has no user location, so Google is much better. In live links SXS, both search engines utilize user location, but Bing shows rich features, map, listings, while Google only shows blue links. So yeah, um, I don't know enough about data processing and coding to understand what this part fully means. But what I'm assuming is I think that they're potentially trying to argue like they're gonna use this response potentially to argue um, that they're full of shit, in my opinion, potentially because if so, I understand that Google and Bing are different search engines, but where they're trying to say Google is better because Bing has no user location, isn't that in and of itself an admission of where Google has more access to data, which is why it's able to scale, whereas they were trying to argue it's based on efficiency, you know what I'm saying? So like this is probably one of those things where they're trying to lay it all out where they're not necessarily consistent, in my opinion. Um, but then it says correcting for measurement errors, and it shows like a solid bar with like a gradient to the net. So I don't know what the fuck they mean, but the solid bar says measure difference between Bing and Google, and then there's like a gradient and it says correcting for measurement errors. But whatever. And then on the other side it says accounting for unmeasured benefits. And then it's like a really tiny line. And then next to like a gradient. I don't know if I'm making sense. And it's the tiny line says effect on the first retraining 6 components with less user-side data, and then the gradient said effective retraining all components with less user-side data. I feel like this is a bad visualization for whatever the fuck the point trying to make, but maybe that's just me. And then it says maybe they are trying to show like how solid the data is. That's what the visual is. I don't know. Okay, moving on. The next slide. It says my response to Professor Fox's central conclusions. Professor Fox's conclusions are unsupported because of unmeasured benefits of user-side data in this experiment, measurement errors in the quality gap, and important benefits of user-side data that this experiment cannot measure. And then it says, the experiment cannot measure all effects of user-side data. 1. Effects on the innovation cycle. Did I say, what the fuck did I just say? Did I say cycle? I can't speak. Y'all know what the fuck I meant. 2. Effects that the IS4 at 5 metric can't measure. 3. Effects that a frozen system can't measure. So it looks like now we're going to address effects on the innovation cycle regarding the experiment cannot measure all effects of user-side data. So user-side data benefits from the innovation cycle. So we have idea and implementation leads to evaluation and decision, which leads back to ideation and implementation. So we have a cycle here. And it says people leverage user-side data. And then it shows user-side data benefits the innovation cycle. So in regarding ideation and implementation, I believe is what we're going to look at next. It says engineers leverage user-side data. And so now we looks like we're going to be getting answers from John Gianandrea, Apple Senior Vice President of Machine Learning and AI Strategy, former Google Head of Search and AI. So we have a question here. So the more queries a search engine sees, the more opportunities it has to improve in this manner? Answer. The more opportunities the engineers have to look for patterns and improve the algorithm, yeah. And then next up, we've got a quote from Pandu Nayak, Vice President of Search Google. So sorry if I said her name wrong. Question. One thing that Google might do is look at queries for inspiration on what it might need to improve on. Does that sound familiar? Answer. Yes. Question. And so what does that mean? Answer. So we create samples of queries that on which we evaluate how well we are doing overall using the IS metric, and often we look at queries that have low IS to try and understand what is going on. What are we missing here? So that's a way of figuring out how we can improve our algorithms. And the next step, addressing the concept of evaluation and decision regarding user-side data benefits the innovation cycle. We're looking at how engineers and managers leverage user-side data. And it says, user-side data is key to launch decisions. And it shows search launches over the last 12 months. So we've got 118,812 precision evaluations, 10,391 side-by-side experiments, 7,018 live traffic experiments, as well as 665 launches. This is 2018 Google. We're back to hearing from Professor Edward Fox, Google's expert witness. It says, on the role of user interaction data in innovation. Question, whether it's innovation, better algorithms, or the like you didn't study, but that's what accounts for the other 97% in your view? Answer, so I don't know what the other parts are. I have guesses because I've worked in the field for a long time, but it's not from user interaction data. That's what I can tell. So they were basically like, if having user data doesn't help you scale efficiently, what the fuck does, if that's your argument? And his answer was like, I don't know, man, but it's not from data. In my opinion, is basically what the fuck could be happening here, is how I'm taking it in the context of which I'm understanding it. And that's fucking hilarious to me, because what a fucking joke, right? But anyway, moving on. Now we're addressing item number 2, effects that the IS4 at 5 metric can't measure. Regarding the experiment cannot measure all effects of user-side data. So it shows metrics are not search quality. It says IS4 is an approximation of user utility, treated as such. Always look for real user value supported by thorough analysis and other metrics. And this is from 2021. So, right here, metrics are not search quality. We're addressing that. We're addressing that concept. And in the documentation, it says it's an approximation of user utility, okie dokie, and that it is our most important top-line ranking metric, but it's still an approximation and is error-prone. We should treat it as such and always look for real user value support. So, they're saying IS4 has errors. It's a guesstimate. It's an estimation of user utility, but it does not necessarily measure search quality, is what they're saying. So, and then it says the IS4 at 5 metric is only a part of the story. So a lot of this is redacted, so I'm not going to bother trying to read it from what it's redacted, I think, or maybe I should. Shit, fuck it. So we have 2 quotes from redacted documents. I'm going to read the redacted documents, and then we will reread the quotes from the documents after. So from 2018 redacted documents regarding ranking for search, we have the concept of some known IS3 shortcomings. And it says, queries, ratings, and documents may be from different times. We reuse ratings to enable rapid re-evaluation. We reuse ratings to enable rapid evaluation and to control costs. Suppose a document was written after the query was issued and rated after the document was stale. What does that and then it's cut off. But I think it says, what does that rating even mean? And then it says, raters may not understand technical queries. For example, biblical citation format, trucking insurance requirements, military procedures, youth fads, etc. And then it says, some known IS3 shortcomings. Raters cannot accurately be the judge of popularity of anything. For example, competing query interpretation of rival products. And then it's partly cut off, but I think it says raters must understand English, but this may make them atypical search in some locales. Similarly, all raters are adults, while many users are not. And then it says, raters tend to be unduly harsh on user-generated content. This can be disorganized, illiterate, and rowdy, both also quite useful. Did they just call their users illiterate? I feel like that's an insult. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. And then most of this stuff that it's from is redacted, but I'm going to read what I can from what it's not redacted on the 2021 documentation. And this seems to, I don't know what this seems to be coming from, but some sort of indexing related type memo. But it says many results, like web results without a byline date, for example, Facebook, or knowledge panel or local universal blogs, do not have a clear publication date and hence lack a result age. Their content is almost always up to date, but it can still lose relevance quickly in face of real-world events. For example, in the event of a newsworthy fire in a hotel, the local universal with reviews and opening hours of that hotel loses relevance. Thus, we include another signal in result newness, which detects sudden decrease in user interactions. And then it's redacted partly. And after that, it says, under the concept of freshness node training, it says, a notorious problem with tuning freshness models is the lack of good training labels. In IS ratings, human raters don't always pay enough attention to the freshness aspect of relevance or lack the time context for the query, thus undervaluing fresh results for fresh-seeking queries. We found that the existing tangram utility, previously Tetris utility, based on IS, and used to train relevance and other scoring curves, suffered from the same issue. Due to this limitation of human labels, the ranking curves of the freshness node were all hand-tuned in its first launch. Then it continues to be redacted, so I think that can kind of help, like earlier we read about Tetris, I didn't know what the fuck that meant then, so now we know that that's involved in the ranking algorithm portion here. And so for 2018, those documentations, the two quotes that was highlighted here of the concept, the IS 4@5 metric is only a part of the story. It says raters may not understand technical queries, and raters cannot accurately judge the popularity of anything. And then from the redacted documentation of 2021, it says, in IS ratings, human raters don't always pay enough attention to the freshness aspect of relevance or lack the time context for the query, thus undervaluing fresh results for fresh-seeking queries. So yeah, so here we can see, there's also human error and human interpretation involved. And then next up, it shows Google uses many metrics to evaluate search quality. And so then it shows metrics from a search quality review from 2016 Google documentation. And it says metrics. Goal is to capture user intent with metrics. Main metrics, IS, PQ, side-by-sides, live experiments, freshness. Use these metrics for signal development, launches, and tracking. And then it says, let's look at a few metrics. So yeah. And then it shows live experiment metrics provide crucial insights. And it labels live experiments as LE. And it says all ranking experiments run live experiments if possible. Measures position weighted long clicks. Eval team now using attention as well. And this is from redacted documentation of that 2016 search quality review. And now we're moving on to item number 3 regarding the experiment cannot measure all effects of user-side data. And we are looking at the effects that a frozen system can't measure. So yeah. This next slide here is completely redacted. But the title of it says frozen systems are different from live systems. And the rest is redacted. And then here it shows some documentation regarding frozen systems lack fresh user-side data. So I'm just going to read what I can of this documentation. And so I'm going to read an overview of this documentation and then read the freshness node. Like, we'll read a couple of what I can of this documentation. So the overview I can read says, freshness is an important aspect of search, both within web results and search features. We need to surface relevant information as soon as it becomes available and stop showing content whenever it becomes out of date. In a previous ranking newsletter, we have extensively covered the topic of freshness in web ranking. In this newsletter, we will discuss the role of freshness in the broader search stack, focusing on the most recent developments. We will start from fresh indexing and retrieval as the fundamental of all search result types. Following that, we will cover more recent freshness changes for search features, in particular, web answers, tangram, local news, and video. This newsletter doesn't cover the topic of news ranking for top stories in the news property. Similarly, images and YouTube search have slightly different freshness needs. While they followed a similar flow and borrowed many ideas from the web search, all have significantly diverged from the web stack to deserve separate newsletters of their own. And then it shows the freshness node in tangram. So it says tangram is a framework for ranking all the results we show on a search result page, including both web results and non-web results. And it's redacted. And it says an important dimension of tangram is ensuring that the whole page composition is freshness aware, that we rank features with fresh information whenever it's relevant, and that we don't rank features whose content has become out of date. One important aspect of freshness is ensuring that our ranking signals reflect the current state of the world. In the glue node, this concern is addressed horizontally by blending signals from the instant glue pipeline into the regular glue signals. Instant glue is a real-time pipeline aggregating the same fractions of user interaction signals as glue, but only from the last 24 hours of logs, with a latency of about 10 minutes. If instant glue has enough query value, or if there's evidence that the query is fresh seeking, the blending logic uses instant signals with a higher weight. See the newsletter about the pipeline and on the blending logic for more details. However, the relevance node is still susceptible to grandfathering. A feature composed of very fresh content can have its relevance undervalued. For example, a video universal block composed of fresh videos, providing important updates about a fire that just broke out, but lacking anchors as they're just minutes or hours old. And conversely, a feature with large amount of relevant evidence can suddenly become less relevant due to change in the query meaning. Local universe results showing opening hours and reviews of the place where the fire broke out. Example, 2 results for the query. Mandarin Hotel from London, UK, after a large fire broke out in the hotel. A local universal block whose traditional relevant signals are overvalued shows the map, just shows the hotel showing up in maps. And it says a video universal block whose traditional relevant signals are undervalued, and it shows video. And then it says freshness node formulation. The role of the freshness node, and it shows in quotation mark, Go/Tetris Unified Freshness, is to add corrections to grandfathered scores. For fresh seeking queries, it promotes fresh content and demotes stale content. The high-level formulation of the score boost is, and then it continues, but we don't get to see the rest. And so the quote that is highlighted from this document regarding frozen systems lack fresh user-side data, and this is from 2021, it says, one important aspect of freshness is ensuring that our ranking signals reflect the current state of the world. Instant glue is a real-time pipeline aggregating the same fractions of user interaction signals as glue, but only from the last 24 hours of logs with a latency of about 10 minutes. And then it shows the freshness benefits from user-side data. And it's addressing freshness in Tetris, and it applies instant glue in Tetris. It demotes or suppresses stale features for fresh deserving queries, promotes top stories, and signals for newsy queries. And then it also says, on the day of the attack, nice pictures has different interpretation. Instant glue will suppress image universal. I don't know what they mean by like attack, but okay. And then it says news and pictures from Nice, France is the main intent of the query. Maybe the search was, maybe it's about an attack in okay, I don't know. Maybe they're giving an example for a search query. Maybe that's why it's irrelevant. I don't know. But okay, because partly redacted. And then it's got, the quote here is redacted, but the next slide shows that they had another quote from Google's expert witness, Professor Edward Fox, regarding how this experiment can't test effects of user-side data on freshness. And then it goes back to where I was complaining earlier about this slide where it shows like two bars comparing and correcting for measurement errors versus accounting for unmeasured benefits, where it shows like the gradient compared to a line and a full bar, and I don't understand what the fuck they mean by that. It's the same slide again, but it has another thing on it that says beneficial effects of user-side data this experiment cannot measure. I don't know what the fuck they mean by that, but okay. And then it seems to be addressing Professor Fox's third conclusion, and it says a company as efficient as Google, but with Microsoft's scale, would not meaningfully benefit from increase in user interaction data. And I've already addressed how I think that's a fucking joke, but let's keep going. And it says the results show a substantial effect on long-tail queries. And it shows a redacted graph of the difference, IS4 at 5 difference in head and torso queries versus long tail queries. And it says beneficial effects of user-side data can be different for different queries. And that makes sense because different queries are seen more on different devices, in my opinion. Okay, and then next up, we've got a quote from Pandu Nayak, Vice President of Search at Google, and we have an answer here. It says, so we came up with the following way of thinking about it. Wikipedia is a really important source on the web. Lots of great information. People like it a lot. If we took Wikipedia out of our index, completely out of our index, then that would lead to an IS loss of roughly about a half point. So that gives you a sense for what a point of IS is. A half point is a pretty significant difference if it represents the whole Wikipedia wealth of information there. So I guess they're just putting into context how they measure where they index somebody or something. I don't know. And now we're going to be addressing. Okay, but you know what? I honestly don't know how this quote addresses that last conclusion regarding the scale. But I do feel other things in this presentation did, but maybe that could have been done through this redacted presentation slide, but whatever. Okay, so the fourth and final conclusion that we seem to be addressing here says there are diminishing returns to search quality from an increase in the quantity of user interaction data. And it says diminishing returns are not vanishing returns. And it shows a line graph here of amount of training data available and the point where benefits begin to decrease. But it still shows escalation in amount of training data. And so it says benefits continue to accrue, and that benefits would be greater for tail queries, fine-grained location, etc. And then next up, it's got another quote here from Pandu Nayak, Vice President of Search at Google, and it says Google's choices confirm benefits continue to accrue. So question, Google has a large collection of session logs. Does each click, each piece of data have the same value to Google? Answer. And so there is this trade-off in terms of amount of data that you use, the diminishing returns of the data, and the costs of processing the data. And so there's a sweet spot along the way where the value has started diminishing. The costs have gone up, and that's where you would stop. And then on our last slide here, it shows that Google clearly gets returns from user-side data. And it shows more than 13 years of Bing's user-side data doesn't even come close to 13 months of Google's user-side data is what I believe they're trying to demonstrate, but I feel like there's this weird-ass fucking bar graph here. I don't know. But yeah, fucking yeah. So that concludes us addressing our first presentation of this live stream. I believe we're going to be able to get through at least one more exhibit. So yay, we're getting through more than one exhibit this stream. Yay us. So we just looked at the rebuttal testimony of Professor Douglas W. Oard. It looks like this testimony was here to primarily rebut Dr. Fox. Not doctor. Is he a doctor? I don't know why I said doctor. Is Douglas Oard a doctor? Did I just say doctor? The fuck am I saying doctor for? I don't know. Okay, so we addressed the rebuttal testimony of Professor Douglas W. Oard, and then he seems to be rebutting Professor Edward A. Fox of Google. So it looks like basically Google was trying to claim they don't really need data to scale, they're just that great. And this presentation is basically Douglas Oard being like, the lie detector determined that was a fucking lie, bitch. You know what I'm saying? So that's a rough summary of this presentation. And so fucking moving on. Next up, what we're going to be looking at is one more presentation from Professor Michael Whinston. So we're looking at exhibit item number UPX D106. This is Professor Michael Whinston presentation, November 16, 2023. Seems to have been uploaded November 17, 2023. So yeah. Okie dokie. Now, this seems to be addressing the rebuttal testimony of Professor Michael D. Whinston. So, before we get to that, I just want to remind you guys, if you're near Pasadena, Texas, thinking about getting a tattoo, check out Ink by Cass Tattoo. Yeah, that's Ink by Cass Tattoo at the VHO studio around Houston, Texas in Pasadena. So, we're about to read rebuttal testimony of Professor Michael D. Whinston from November 16, 2023. So, first up, we are back to addressing market definition and market power. So here we can see the output growth occurs in monopolized market. So we're looking at the global crude oil production, and it's showing 4 different line graphs here. So we can see the global crude oil production, the millions of barrels per year produced by Standard Oil. We can see the long distance calls for the U.S. common carriers between 1935 and 1982 regarding AT&T. We can see global PC shipments, millions of PCs per year, 1977 and 2000 from Microsoft. And now we can see a very similar curve when we look at the exploding output. In user search where it belies the plaintiff's claims of monopoly power regarding Google. So we can see here that user search output has more than doubled since 2011. Output expansion refutes a claim of monopoly power. Unless plaintiffs show output would have grown even faster in the but-for world, plaintiffs have not done so. So this looks like what Google is trying to argue. You know, this is very weak in my opinion, because Google is basically trying to argue, like they're comparing themselves to other people that were actually found as monopolies and saying, look, we're not like them, but in fact, they're actually quite similar. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion. Um, and then where they're saying that plaintiffs would have to show that Google's output would have grown even faster in the but-for world. I feel like they have shown that. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what? They literally showed with the timeline of the technological developments where they compared it to when the agreements came into place that Google was monopolizing, you know, where the agreements came into place with these different carriers and these different operating manufacturers, where they were able to show the timeline of these agreements is where Google's growth exploded. They compared all of this, and then where other people's growth decreased. So in my opinion, the plaintiffs did prove this. So this is a weak ass argument to me. But that's just me. I'm like, for me, it's like Google. You literally, you got multi-billion-dollar lawyers, and this is the best you could come up with? Okay. Or what am I saying? Like, I don't even know. But like, y'all probably spending multi-billion dollars on lawyers is what I mean. You know what the fuck I mean? Fuck it. Whatever. Okay. So next up, this slide says Apple did not have a viable alternative to Google when negotiating the ISA. And so here we have a quote from Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, in question. So armed with all of this information we've just been talking about, at any point in your discussions in 2016 with Mr. Cook and Mr. Q, did you communicate to them that they didn't really have any leverage in negotiating a revenue share percentage because Google was the only viable option? Answer. I looked at it with a set of factors. Our search usage had grown tremendously, so the deal was working well for us. Users were happy with their experience. It was a competitive dynamic. There was a lot of uncertainty about what Apple would do because Apple tends to, control its own experience. And by the way, yes, I did take what you're saying into account, which was why we didn't pay the share Apple wanted. Okay. So, in my opinion, Google's basically like, yeah, we knew that Apple had no other choice but to still work with us because they were going to lose money if they didn't. So we didn't pay them what they wanted, in my opinion. Is basically what the fuck I think you just said. Am I wrong? That's what I heard. Is that what you heard? And then it says, Professor Murphy sees a lot of headroom above what Google pays for defaults. And here we got a quote from Kevin Murphy, Google expert professor of economics, University of Chicago. And the answer here says, so the idea that we can infer they had a precise estimate, I think is incorrect because the deals they were doing weren't conditional on that number being exactly right or even close to right? In other words, there's a lot of headroom between those numbers and what the deal they were doing. So is he basically saying Google could be paying a lot more for the defaults? That they could be making more money, that they should be paying more? Is that what he's saying? I don't know. Okay. And then next up, it says Google aimed to raise prices to extract all advertiser value. So let's read this documentation. So this seems to be from their Q1 PAOKR proposal. I don't know everything about what these internal documentation means, but that's fine. It says finalize HE definition for bad and very bad ads. Initial holistic quality metric validated. plus about 1% holistic quality, and less than about 5% pointless ads. 2 ad candidates vetted through blindness experiments and 2 new signals in experiment. QS revamp plan approved at SAR. Don't know what the fuck any of this means. They've got some comments on that shit. I'm not gonna read that because to be honest, I don't even know what the fuck that shit means. But fuck it. Now I want to. Okay, comment. Right. One comment said, "What is the connection between pointless ads and the bad, very bad ads?" I understand that what you're trying to say, but we need to use a consistent convention. Also, do we think that we can both do a template finalization for these ads and also collect enough labels, update models, etc., to get a 5% reduction? Another comment. Are these the same or different? And does it only have to do with usefulness, or does it explicitly have to do with, I can't see what this says, enriching, I think, enriching the user experience. Then it says EWOQ redacted is starting to work on these templates today, but I would agree the timeline is aggressive. Another comment. Pointless ads are ads that are bad or very bad for both users and advertisers. Neither party derives benefit. Ads can be bad for users but good for advertisers. For example, many arbitrage ads. These kinds of ads will tend to fall more into the priced cut line of action rather than the disabled. Okay. And then it says new signal ideas. Commerciality and informational, UBS. Swift doesn't count since launch in progress. Domain HE, or page quality. Creative representation and relevance. Then in addressing pricing, it says, in 2018, we made huge strides with the holistic pricing effort. We completed the lenses necessary to understand the macro return on investment problem, how good of a deal Google is overall, and understand value changes over time. This then leads to an excess cost per click metric definition as the barometer of pricing, and the creation of a measurement and tuning process for all of ads quality in order to keep prices at least stable over time, including 2 major launches, Patreon and Sugar Maple. Advertiser experiments have become even more powerful. We showed that a 1-month experiment gives similar results to a 6-month one, for format pricing at least, and we now have budget and bid metrics to understand the nature of the response. We also had another breakthrough in pricing mechanisms. Our stateful and statistical-based pricing efforts have demonstrated multiple billions in long-term revenue potential, including the ability to effectively set prices for reserved priced ads. In 2019, we will continue the work of holistic pricing and tune for pricing curve stability. And, more ambitiously, we will build on this very strong foundation and try to move from keeping prices stable over time, excess cost per click based tuning, to actually understanding advertiser value at a fine-grained level and making sure the price is right. That means that the price reflects value. And effort we are calling value-based pricing, VBP. Holistic pricing aims to keep the click cost curve stable over time, but value-based pricing aims to create the right curves. Analysis-wise, the value-based pricing effort will require the creation of new metrics and techniques to estimate value. For example, a cost per acquisition index, the definition of baskets of queries. We aim to consistently price metrics that enable us to measure value consistency and improve techniques to understand where the auction often fails to set a good price. Mechanism development will continue as a major focus for thresholds. Stateful and statistical pricing, PCP, or GSP, are 2 newer ideas we aim to launch in 2019. And there will also be improvements to format pricing as we adjust to handle a world of fine-grained predictions and possibly different blindness effects based on user interface. The stateful work will be heavily intertwined, and it keeps going, but we don't get the rest of that. And then we have some comments here. One comment says, are we open to considering stateful as a mechanism for UCA too? That is, have user behavior-based states bundles and use that as an auction signal. Another comment. Haven't thought about it honestly. To me, the baskets of queries would be to fight off things like advertisers cherry picking the good users. So I'd want to be very careful here. Another comment. I see. I understand the concern here. We'll have to think about mechanisms that can be useful without having incentive issues. Had early discussions with redacted a couple of quarters back about this, but haven't followed up. And it says, Ying, do you have any new thoughts on this? Okay, so what's highlighted from this document, putting that back into context here, and this is coming back into the context of Google aimed to raise prices to extract all advertiser value. And we can see that with their value-based pricing method here. And so, and then it shows a quote here from 2018. In 2019, we will continue the work of holistic pricing and tune for pricing curve stability. And, more ambitiously, we will build on this very strong foundation and try to move from keeping prices stable over time. Excess cost per click based tuning to actually understanding advertiser value at a fine grain level and making sure the price is right. That is, prices reflect value, an effort we are calling value-based pricing. Holistic pricing aims to keep the cost per click curves stable over time, but value-based pricing aims to create the right curves in 2018. So, link in the description of this video. I actually have a video about pricing. In that pricing, I talk about value-based, cost-based, as well as market-based pricing. And so I highly recommend checking that out. Now, just because you're using the concept of value-based pricing doesn't inherently mean you're just trying to get as much money as you can out of someone. What it typically means when used in good faith is that you are charging for the extra value you can give somebody. Now, what is wrong about the way Google is utilizing this concept in this document, in my opinion? They're literally saying we're going to create the right curves, where they are saying that they want to influence the supply and demand curve here in order to raise prices, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? They're not going into it with, we are charging this because of value-based reasons. They're going into it with, we are switching to value-based so we can create curves in the market. You see what I mean here? That's where I'm like, Now, so just because you see someone talking about value-based pricing isn't in and of itself a red flag when they are explaining why they charge what they charge, because you get this value from it, right? But when someone says, I'm using value-based pricing so that way I can bullshit how much I'm charging, that's when I'm like, the fuck is wrong with you? What? No, that's not what? That's what I don't like. So, okay, moving on. It says, Google aimed to set prices 1 penny less than the breaking point. And so here we've got documentation from an internal a memo, I believe here, or some slides or something. But it says, under the concept of slides, it says, we had follow-up conversations with G/R. Address these questions today. Should prices go up? Q1 auction score gap. Why is that a problem? If good competition, little gap. Not true in reality. Even on top 4 queries, still space there. We have many mechanisms we could use to close that gap. Lots of potential there. Why do you think it's poorly priced? Because runner is less than 80% of his score, not putting a high pricing pressure on him. Redacted. Why would there be a 20% gap if good? Redacted. One way to phrase this is that under perfect prices, 1 penny less than the breaking point is the right amount. The advertiser is currently paying at least 20% less than their willingness to pay. Redacted. You want to charge right under their willingness to pay. Redacted. Lifetime value takes into account the whole ecosystem. It could be that the value is the same. Experience is a lot better. The decision we made with the gap is the value goes to the advertisers. And then it says, price based on the value of that ad. Lots of other advertisers competing. GY moves 70% of headroom toward that curve. Redacted. Aren't we giving incentives through discounts though? Yes, all we're saying is current system does not enable to charge price close to the value. Okay. And so it says agenda. Do we want to raise prices? Is it okay to raise prices? How would we roll that out? And then answer the question, why do you think it's poorly priced? And it says because the runner is less than 80% of his score, not putting a high pricing pressure on him. Why would there be a 20% gap of good? One way to phrase this is that under perfect prices, 1 penny less than the breaking point is the right amount. The advertiser is currently paying at least 20% less than their willingness to pay. 2017. So, yeah, they're saying they want to go from where the advertisers are currently paying 20% less than they would probably be willing to where they're paying 1 penny less than they would be willing to. In my opinion, it was what they're saying from all this documentation. So yeah, fucking, and that's where we can see under this concept, Google aimed to set prices 1 penny less than the breaking point. So yeah, and then next up we have a slide here. It says, Dr. Israel agrees that Google raises prices when it improves quality. And it says, Mark Israel, PhD, Google expert, Compass Lexicon. And so we have two answers from him. So one says, so a lot of what the auction quality guys are doing is they're in separate room making the auction work better, making that #1 click-through rate go up. And that's having the effect without any adjustment of pushing cost per click down. Prices are going down in response to that quality improvement. So lots of the discussions you see in Google documents are just grappling with that. We want to improve ad quality, but as a profit maximizing firm, we don't want that to drive our prices down. That doesn't make sense to us. So they're trying to deal with that. And then it says Google is a profit maximizing firm. You want it to have incentives to make it paid click-through rate better. You need some mechanism to deal with this issue. Actually, I don't even know what the P in here stands for. What am I saying paid? To make the PCTR, I'm assuming something to do with click-through rate. What the fuck? Predicted click-through rate. Okay. You want it to have incentives to make the paid to predict. I keep saying paid to make the predicted click-through rate better. You need some mechanism to deal with this issue, which is the general one I talked about with knobs. Which is if predicted click-through rate gets better, you can end up driving the price way down. They're not raising the price from $1.30. They're implementing the predicted click-through rate, but at least offsetting this effect. So yeah. So here's where I think they're basically trying to say from this documentation where they were saying that they want people to go from paying 20% less than they're willing to pay to 1 penny less. He's saying it's not that we're raising prices, we're just charging based on a predicted click-through rate, which is the same fucking thing. You know what I mean? Okay. And then it says, advertiser actions depend on what their options are. Mark Israel, PhD, Google expert, Compass Lexicon. Question, but my point is, sir, is that in considering whether they raise prices or whether they're going to launch an ad quality increase, there's no discussion of what competitors are doing, just in this paragraph that you cited. Is that correct? Answer, not in this paragraph. There's lots and lots of consideration. In fact, on the part we can't see on the screen about how advertisers will react. Question, how advertisers will react? Answer, advertiser reactions are where competition comes in because advertisers react given what their options are. And then it says Google experiments showed low advertiser responses to price increases. It's partly redacted, but it says the overall room for pricing from a response angle looks similar to what we measured last year. Advertisers' actions are now better understood. And it's got about an analysis, partly redacted, and then partly this word is redacted, and it says thickage on overall. Convergence confirms on these slices, and for that treatment, that 6 weeks might be enough. Now looking into contribution of various slices, small, medium, and large, and explaining the BC response. Too noisy to make anything out, a long-standing issue. So, yeah. I guess that's their notes on conversion rates from price increase? I don't know. I'm just making assumptions here. Okay, and so then it says the relevant markets are consistent with the circle principle. I don't know enough about the circle principle to know what the fuck that means, but here they show Google as Google Chrome in the middle, and then Yahoo, Bing, and DuckDuckGo are around it. Those would be the general search engines. Amazon, Zillow, Expedia, and Yelp, those are specialized search engines around that. And then Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram around that are social media platforms. And then it says audience overlap is not necessary for two products to be substitutes. And it shows a slide on demonstrative deck of Dr. Israel from Google. It says, I strongly agree with Professor Whinston's factor number 2, audience overlap. For two ads to be substitutes for one another, they must allow advertisers to reach overlapping audiences. And then it says, this factor trumps the others in important ways. The role in the purchase journey. Without audience overlap, different ads will affect different purchase journeys, limiting substitutability. And then it talks about effective targeting. Without audience overlap, different ads will target different individuals, limiting substitutability. So, yeah. And it says Dr. Israel's analysis of the Nike Facebook boycott is flawed. And it says empirical analysis demonstrates substitution. Nike shifted from social ads to search ads during the Meta boycott. During the boycott, Nike reallocated or substituted search ads for ads on Meta. After the boycott, Nike shifted back to earlier allocations and search ad spending fell. Thus, ads on Google and Meta are economic substitutes. In my opinion, that's not true, because why would Nike go back to Facebook if Google was a good substitute for it? You know what I'm saying? It looks like they just put their ad budget somewhere else because there was a fucking ban. Like, what? What? A boycott is not evidence that something is something to substitute, in my opinion. Like, there's only so many ad platforms that you can run on. You know what I mean? And so it's like Facebook and Google are ads primarily go because when you get into like demand side platforms and all of that, those can have like $10,000 minimums. Okay. And then it says Nike substituted largely to social and display ads, not search ads. And it shows Nike's monthly digital ad spend by format relative to spend in January 2020. And it shows the boycott period, and it shows their ad spend. And it says economists typically measure substitution using elasticities. And it says Mark Israel, PhD, Google expert, Compositecon, question, and your Nike study is not a measure of elasticity of Facebook ads. Answer, I agree with that. It's a measure of cross-elasticity. Given that Nike left, how did it divide up? Okay, in my opinion though, because Google, as you've already shown in the evidence and in our previous material coverage, we've already discussed how Google targets people at the bottom funnel. Social media platforms target people at the top funnel. Primarily is what they're best optimized for. Those are not substitutes for each other. They can go hand in hand. Now, for temporary time periods and with and for on a budget when you're not worried about scaling but you're still trying to just maintain a presence, you can go on one or the other and not do both and still do pretty well. However, they're not substitutes for each other, and you're going to have a hard time scaling that way, in my opinion. It can be done, but it's difficult. I don't think it's a substitute. It's a, you know what I mean? Just because someone can make something work, make do with what you got, that doesn't mean it's an actual substitute in terms of getting the same result. It's just going with the choice you're stuck with, in my opinion. And I don't see it as elasticity because like we are talking about something in which you have no option but to do. You know what I'm saying? It's like saying like if you don't have insulin and you go to the hospital, that means that the hospital is a substitute for insulin, right? That's their logic to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, are you fucking I'm about to be ableist. I gotta stop that. Internalized ableism. Ugh. Okay. Anyway, it says Nike substituted largely to social and display ads, not search ads. And I've already discussed how I think this is bullshit, but what the point they're highlighting, is showing conversion before and after Facebook pause. And they have 3 points here. It says when we paused Facebook and Instagram, we reallocated most of our social investment in DBM, display, and search, which both drive higher MTA demand at the cost of decreased creative evaluation and less storytelling. And then it says during the pause, social investment shrunk by more than half to just 8% of overall PM budget allocation due to limitations on scale opportunities within Snapchat, Pinterest, and Twitter. After relaunch, budget allocation shifted back to similar allocations to pre-pause, with slightly more investment staying within DBM, Snapchat, and Twitter. And then it discusses the importance of defaults. And it talks about Professor Murphy's estimates of default effects are incorrect. Oh my God! Now it's saying that it's incorrect to say that defaults are important. That's bullshit right then and there, in my opinion. And their own evidence has already fucking counteracted that, where even they themselves have admitted that they relied on the defaults in their own fucking contracts and shit. So that's just me. This is how are you gonna have it's just so wishy-washy. How do you seriously go to court with this argument? This is why they lost their case. Are you kidding me? But it's just could you really not have built a better case? Wow. Anyway, it says market evidence, including Windows and Mozilla Firefox, shows that a weaker rival would obtain between 15% and 20% of queries as the default, even using a coverage approach. And then it says Google, Microsoft, and Apple all recognize significant default effects, but it's redacted, whatever. And then it says Professor Murphy's claim that default effects on mobile are small is flawed and unreliable. And then it says evidence from Windows Mobile. 60% of new Bing mobile users churn within 1 week. 15% of new users churn after trialing the product in at least 2 different weeks. Only about 7% become regular. And it says Whinston's share of Bing on Windows phones in 2016, a year before such devices were discontinued, reflects self-selection. Windows phones made up only about 4%, less than 0.4%, my bad, of smartphone shipments. So yeah. And then it says Professor Murphy's claim that default effects on mobile are small is flawed and unreliable. It says no market participants relied on these numbers when estimating the impact of the defaults. These estimates do not make economic sense. And then it says Google's exclusive defaults foreclose 33 to 50% of the general search services market. Foreclosure is the share of the market that is tied up by Google's exclusive contracts. The 50% is a share of U.S. queries covered by Google's exclusive contracts. The 33% captures the lower bound proportion of people who will not change their default. There are no possible investment rivals can make to win these people. And then it discusses Professor Murphy's foreclosure estimate is misguided. And here we have a quote from Kevin Murphy, Google expert professor of economics, University at Chicago. And we have a question. It says, okay, so you are not offering a foreclosure number based on the test you described in slide 64. Answer, I don't think there's any foreclosure. So I would say foreclosure is 0 in this case. So I wouldn't offer a foreclosure number. So they're trying to say that Google's, that the way Google has built themselves in the market doesn't prevent anyone else from entering, I think is what they're trying to argue. But we can obviously see how that's, multi-billion-dollar companies have literally said that they can't enter the market because of these contracts, in my opinion, you know what I mean? And then next up, it shows competition for the contract. And it says competition for the contract does not prevent competitive harm. And it says a dominant firm and distributor can find it worthwhile to enter contracts that harm competition. Competition is a public good. When bidding for an exclusive contract, a dominant firm can use the monopoly profits it protects to make sure it wins. When there is a dominant firm, competition for exclusives can make competition less intense. And then in addressing competition for the contract does not prevent competitive harm, it's now highlighting a dominant firm and distributor can find it worthwhile to enter contracts that harm competition. Competition is a public good. And it says, Mozilla wanted to level the playing field in search, but could not do it alone. And so it shows why Yahoo. And it says users, opportunity to innovate features and services that are customized to Firefox users, mission alignment, an agent for change, independence from Google, opportunity to level the playing field in search, and it shows financial security, high guarantee, 5-year term, diversified sustainability projects, and projected growth of market share. And so 3 key points underneath this says an agent for change, independence from Google, an opportunity to level the playing field in search. And then it says, why not Google? And it says, for users, it doesn't show anything. But for mission alignment, it says, does not promote competition for search, supports the continued dominance of Google, dependency on Google. For financial security, it says no revenue guarantee, need product and business focus to succeed, and revenue share could drop below projections. Then regarding downside risk, it says no opportunity to grow share, Mozilla must change to focus on search volume and performance, and no guarantee. And then underneath that, the 3 key points here, it says does not promote competition for search, supports the continued dominance of Google, and dependency on Google. And this is from 2014. And then next up, it says competition for the contract does not prevent competitive harm. And in relation to this, we are now highlighting when bidding for an exclusive contract, a dominant firm can use the monopoly profits it protects to make sure it wins. And it says a dominant firm will outbid rivals for exclusives to maintain its dominance. So we have a quote from Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. So sorry if I said that wrong. And it says, right now, there is basically status quo, right? The dominant player in search is paying a lot of money to maintain that search position. And then, in relation to competition for the contract does not prevent competitive harm, we are now highlighting when there is a dominant firm, competition for exclusives can make competition less intense. And so, we're looking at pro-competitive justifications. And it says Google did not consider the claimed pro-competitive benefits in its analysis of the Apple deal. But I can't really tell you much about this concept because this whole fucking slide is basically redacted. And then next up it says, Professor Murphy's claims about the Android agreements are unpersuasive. It says contracts enhance competition between Android and iOS. Does it? It says the contracts ensure consistent out-of-the-box Android experience. I guess we can argue that it does maintain consistency. And then it says MADA barter leads to lower-priced Android phones. That, I would argue, does it really? Are you sure? And then, okay. And then moving on, it talks about investment incentives. It says, Professor Murphy's assessment of the Microsoft-Yahoo deal is misleading. It says Microsoft's syndication deal doubled its scale in December 2010, but this does not lead to a material improvement in Bing's relative quality. And then it says Bing's relative quality plateaued after Microsoft's scale doubled, the opposite of what Whinston's theories predicts. And then it says, Whinston erroneously claimed Bing's October 2010 quality increase resulted from a doubling of scale from syndication, but Bing quality increases in 2010 predate the increase in scale and highlight the importance of other initiatives and improvement for search quality. What I don't like about this argument is where they were saying that it's the opposite of Winston's theories predict. Winston, in my opinion, was basically saying that if Microsoft had the ability to scale in the same way that Google did, that they could actually compete effectively with them, right? In my opinion, if I interpreted all of this correctly. But here, they're trying to say, because Bing wasn't able to grow when Microsoft's scale doubled, that's not true. I disagree because Microsoft doesn't have the ability to scale the same way as Google. So you can't compare Microsoft scale to Google scale and then say that's the opposite of what Winston's theory predicts, when Winston's theory is based on being able to scale in the same way as Google. You know what the fuck I'm saying? So, like, what? Anyway, let's keep going. It says Bing's quality increased after its syndication deal with Yahoo. And it shows the Bing precision scores in the United States, February 2011 to October 2012 over a time frame. And then it ends with Professor Murphy's framework for economic analysis of the challenge agreement. 1. Did the challenge agreements harm competition and search? Yes. 2. If the challenge agreements harm competition, are there offsetting pro-competitive efficiencies that outweigh any competitive harms? In my opinion, no. So, wrapping up, that in this, what we just went over was, in my opinion, this was rebuttal testimony of Professor Michael D. Whinston. And it's addressing where Google was basically like trying to basically be like the government side, the plaintiff side is lying about everything. Everything they're saying is a lie and they're misleading. But then all of the evidence that Google provides, literally, in my opinion, demonstrates the plaintiff's side, in my opinion. And fucking literally, they're basically like, the plaintiff never really sits up here like Google's lying. Instead, they just show you how Google said one thing in this case and is now telling you a complete opposite situation. They don't have to sit there and be like, look at Google misleading you. They're literally saying, look, Google said the sky was blue. Now they're saying the sky is orange. They don't have to call Google a liar because Google is just fucking out there lying, in my opinion, based on what we've been looking at. But then Google's strategy seems to be coming in and saying, we're not lying, they're fucking lying, and here's us telling the truth by showing you the same evidence they're showing you, only we're just gonna not take accountability for our behavior. In my opinion, that's what I'm getting from this. So in here, they're basically trying to argue that because Microsoft had the ability to grow at all, Google wasn't a fucking monopoly. But I disagree. You know what I'm saying? So that's what the fuck I took from that presentation. But again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know about the law. I could be processing all of this wrong. This is just what I'm processing in the moment. Okie dokie. So, wrapping up, just summarizing, concluding what we went over today, we've gone over 2 different presentations. The first one was the Professor Douglas Oard presentation, and on that Professor Douglas Oard presentation, we basically were addressing, Professor Oard was rebutting Professor Fox, where they were basically, Google was trying to say that having the user data wasn't why they were scaling. It was because they were just that efficient and just that great, was my interpretation of what they said. You know what I'm saying? And in that presentation, they were able to show and argue from Google's own words how having user data was extremely important to be able to scale. So that was the first thing we went over. And then the second thing, the last thing we went over, was another Professor Michael Whinston presentation. And this one was on particularly being able to show how Google used their market power and how they were able to dominate the market from these contracts. And they were rebutting arguments where it looked like Google was basically trying to say, well, because Microsoft exists at all, we're not a fucking monopoly. And then it looks like Google was trying to compare themselves to other monopolies and say, see, we're nothing like them. But in my opinion, they basically showed they are exactly like them, in my opinion. So, fucking, you know what I'm saying? They basically were trying to be like, they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. You know what I mean? It looked like they didn't have a very strong legal argument because, for example, they were trying to argue that Google could be paying a lot more money for defaults. Therefore, they were not monopolizing because they didn't need the defaults. Otherwise, they would be paying more money for them. But we've already seen where in my opinion, if I'm getting all this correctly, we've already seen where all these other companies literally said, we rely on this money, and so that's why they have the defaults, because we need this fucking money, and we did the math, and we can't afford not to take that money, so therefore they're getting these defaults. You know what I mean? For example. And so, yeah, that's what I was taking from this, where, like, they were literally trying to raise and control the pricing, and then act like that's not monopolizing, when it is. You know what I'm saying? So, that second presentation both proved, partly ways in which, through the algorithm, they were influencing the pricing of things, as well as ways in which they were, compared to other monopolies, executing their contracts to make it so other people couldn't compete effectively, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's what I got from all of this. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. Next up, we will continue going over trial exhibits. I need a break. I said last night that I might go live again that night, and I didn't fucking do it because I had other shit to do, and I just fucking couldn't sit still and shit. So, I would like to say I think I'm gonna try and go live again tonight, but who knows if I can make myself sit through it again. But I'll definitely probably go live tomorrow if I don't go live again tonight. And we'll keep going over trial exhibits and shit like that. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day. And yeah, alrighty. Bye. Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.